Good morning, DJ and PK. It's 97.5 The Zone. Welcome in on a Friday morning. Got a lot to get to this morning, and we're going to start you off, Jazz fans, with a guy who was in here yesterday late in the show, Ben Anderson. Jake and Ben, 10 to noon here on The Zone, and he joined me to talk about the Jazz, put a wrap on the Summer League. They have the one game left tonight with the Chicago Bulls, and then they're all done in Vegas. They're all done for the summer, at least team competition. Obviously, they'll come back and go to work on individual skills over the next couple of months. Here's Ben talking Jazz with me right here on The Zone. Question for you. Wanted to have you in here and pick your brain. You're at a lot of Jazz games. Focused on them. I mean, you, for your radio show, you follow everything.
Yeah.
But for the main gig, writing for the old .comer, you're locked in on the Jazz. Creating content on a regular basis. Well, it's a mix. It's a mix of stuff that's more pop culture-ish, entertainment, but occasionally there's the deep dive. And I like some of your questions, like with Will, I'm like, okay, he's been thinking about this. That's not a question that just popped into his head now. He was mulling this over at 3 o'clock this afternoon.
Nothing else going on in the brain.
Yeah, I know, right? I know the feeling. So I'm curious, your biggest takeaway, and I'm sure you get asked stuff, friends and family and all that, but you watch all these young guys, the rookies, but, they can sing your guys in that too. You watch all these young guys. What's your biggest takeaway from watching them play here in the summer?
I'm going to be underwhelming and say it's that Isaiah Collier can't shoot.
Okay.
And I say that because I think it is the most impactful. Based on last year, Isaiah Collier had, quote-unquote, won the starting job. He was the Jazz's starting point guard to end the season. His entire ability to be on the floor for starters' minutes is going to be dependent on his ability to shoot the ball. And not only is he not shooting it well from the three-point line, he's not shooting it well from the floor, and he's not even making his free throws. It's just a real lack of indicators that the touch is there. And
it's not going to get better. You're giving up hope. You're letting go of the rope.
You would hope that maybe first year, a little rough, second year you come back, and there's just enough of the things that where the ball doesn't go in that it's not bad stretch. You can have a bad shooting stretch. You can have a bad summer league and still see some of the signs that, other things are there. And I do think the other things are there with Isaiah. He's a good playmaker. His speed's good. I like his toughness. But if
all
he doesn't...
things that can keep you in the league, but it's going to keep you in the league in a
backup role.
Smaller role.
Yeah. Because if you can't shoot, it just makes you really hard to play with Walker Kessler specifically, because Walker doesn't shoot. And, you and I watched the Jazz in the 80s and 90s. You've watched the NBA 80s and 90s. How many shooters did the Lakers in the 80s have on the floor? Like, shooters. Kareem didn't shoot. Magic didn't shoot.
Well, it was a different era.
Yeah, but right.
I mean, they weren't required to shoot threes.
Right.
The floor was spaced differently. Teams defended differently. The players weren't as big.
Right.
You demand more space now because the players are, A, so tall, and B, people underappreciate this, they're so long. So when you stick out your arms sideways, your ability to deflect a pass without moving.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're taking away passing lanes, and players weren't that big then. A team would start a 6-foot point guard and a 6'2" shooting guard and maybe a 6'5" small forward. That line now would be laughed off the floor. It is so small.
The Jazz in the 80s had Darrell Griffith. He was their shooter. Mm-hmm. And in the 90s, it was Jeff Malone, and then Hornacek comes in. And John was always a very good shooter. But you had shooting because you had two players on the floor. And there was a handful of good shooters in the NBA, period. Yeah. And then, you started to need to get a little bit more. And now, to the point where you probably have to have at least 4 good shooters on the floor at all times.
I can tell you the first time I saw 4 out and 1 in, and it worked. And it was stunning. And people were like, why is Karl Malone struggling? Why isn't he rebounding? I'm like, because he has to defend Robert Horry. And Robert Horry is 25 feet from the hoop.
Yeah.
But if you don't get out there and get a hand up,
are you talking Rockets Robert Horry?
I am. Mid-90s.
Yeah.
That was it. They played Akeem inside, and they had 4 guys. And up until that point, and we've had a few times, and this goes to how the Jazz need to build this team. Up until that time, there'd been 2-3 stars, right? I mean, the Lakers, the Celtics, into the Pistons, who were a little shorter on star power, into the Bulls, and all of a sudden here comes Hakeem. And it's Hakeem and 4 guys on the three-point line. And there were some nice players.
Horry,
Kenny Smith.
Kenny
the Jet Smith was on that team. Mario was on the team. Yeah. These are all nice players, right? But when you're talking Batman and Robin, no, they're not a superhero. Good players. Great careers and all that, but they're not Pippen. They were really excited to get Pippen. That never paid off for them.
Right.
So that was the start of a trend, and we've seen it since. The Mavericks with Dirk Nowitzki, he didn't win with a Robin, right?
Right.
So it can happen. Toronto, was Pascal Siakam Robin to Kawhi Leonard's Batman? You could do it now, and maybe that's how the Jazz need to build going forward. I still think you probably need Batman and Robin. You probably need the second banana, whatever the expression is. But you can do it without him.
So if Walker's not going to shoot, and I'm not a big-time believer in Walker's ability to step out and shoot threes, even though he's trying, and Collier can't shoot.
You following him next to Derek Favors?
Sure. Yeah. Favors tried.
Another big man tried to get him to shoot.
Tried some quarter threes.
Hey, that went in. Okay, well, he shoots 22%, so they're going to go in once in a while.
Yeah. Right.
Let's not get too excited about one or two.
So you probably can't play Isaiah and Walker together a whole lot.
Right. So if Walker's going to play 33 minutes, Collier's at 15 max.
Yeah, right.
If you're going to be really good.
Yeah. And you look at the Jazz's rotation next year, and Yusuf Nurkic can space the floor a little bit off the bench. Actually, he can do that both with his passing and his shooting.
So.
And Taylor Hendricks is going to be able to space the floor. Well, again, you're just talking about how do you build lineups? Yeah. How do you build lineups that actually make sense for these guys to learn something that will resemble what they are going to be in the NBA? And you can put four other shooters on the floor in the second unit next to Isaiah Collier. And I don't know if you can put him in the starting lineup.
Yeah.
So Nurkic,
and
Taylor
you can also
Hendricks,
just put out a bad lineup.
Cody Williams, whatever.
You may have to run some lineups out there where you don't have two shooters, and it's going to be hard. And he's going to have to use his other skills.
And then that means that you probably either got Walt Clayton or Keontae George starting at point guard. And I do think that matters because that's the exposure that Austin Ainge is going to get to the team. It's when he walks in the door, day one, he's there already, but what does that starting lineup look like and who's playing? And, I've heard that a lot of the decision to move Colin Sexton was about Keontae George, was to empower Keontae because they really like what he's done this summer, apparently. So I haven't seen it because he hasn't played. So, but that's what I've heard. So we'll see. I'm really curious.
He needs to take a big step forward.
He does. This is his make or break here.
I think that we're all talking about Cody Williams needs to take a big step forward. And I feel like he's taken a step forward. Not sure I'd categorize it as a big step.
No.
It's but it's a marathon. So, you've only run 2 miles. Well, if you're going to run a marathon, you have to run 2 miles. We'll judge the third mile when we run the third mile. But
yeah.
It's like, can't judge that yet. And so with Keontae, it's another year down the road, and it hasn't been good enough.
No, it has not.
Shot selection has to change.
And
but I also think attitude and competitiveness has to change. Right, but one thing that makes you a better shooter, this guy's a 40% shooter. How's he going to get to 45%? Well, he shoots 4 of 10. And one time a game, he probably takes 2 or 3 bad shots. And once a game, you have to stifle the urge to take the bad shot.
Yeah.
Because if you're 4 of 9 instead of 4 of 10, you're a 44% shooter, and people look at you differently. Mm-hmm. So as much as it is about is his elbow out and blah, 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 does he bend his knees, all the little fundamentals you learn in camp, it's about once a game, guess what? You're not open past the ball.
Yep. And you know when. Do you recognize it?
Yes.
And that's the ability to read the game.
Deep down, I think you do.
You would hope so. Some guys don't, and they don't make it.
Yep.
But I think that's where, that's why I honestly would think it's going to be Walt Clayton or Keontae battling for that starting spot. If you think Ace Bailey's going to start, I don't know if you start 2 of the new rookies day one. I think that can be hard on teams. Mm-hmm. So maybe you go with Keontae and Ace Bailey.
I don't really worry about who starts. I realize the coach has to. Mm-hmm. But as far as development, tell me about the minutes and tell me about the FGAs. Because if you get the minutes but you don't get the shots because you're standing in the corner and they don't leave you, I just don't know how much you're learning from that's going to apply 3, 4, 5 years down the line when hopefully they're a lot better than this.
Yeah.
Everybody talks about a long rebuild. I'm like, well, sure, but the Pacers and the Thunder were both in the lottery 3 years in a row, and then years 4 and 5, they get to 5 and they're both in the finals playing each other.
Yep.
How long a rebuild does it have to be?
Right.
Well, apparently longer.
For the Jazz longer.
How much longer? I don't know.
And the other part about this with Isaiah Collier, not to beat a dead horse, but he's not big. He's listed at 6'5", he's 6'2", as is Keontae George. Walt Clayton's the tallest of all of them. He might be 6'3". So as you just said about the 80s Lakers or the 80s basketball, you could play a 6'2" point guard and a 6'3" shooting guard and a 6'5" small forward.
Yeah.
Well, you can't anymore. So you probably can't play Isaiah Collier, Keontae George, and Walt Clayton in the rotation. You can probably, long term, you can probably only play 2 of them, and they've got to be your point guards, which is why the Jazz have been trying to make Keontae George a point guard for a long time.
But that's not going to work.
I think you've got to get rid of one of them.
Well...
And so that's what you got to figure out.
Austin just got here. Well, what I do like about that is Sexton's not on the timeline for the Jazz winning. As long as it's going to take, as much as I can cite Oklahoma City and Indiana and be impatient, and as you can see, I can already do all those things. Congrats to me.
Right.
So I get why they move on from Sexton. And because of the way the second apron works, the value of a veteran has gone way down. It's there's too many teams up against it, and they don't want to pay the double down on the bonus luxury tax. It's just too much money, even for these multi-billionaires. So what you have to do in this rebuild is they draft 3 guys every year. You got to make sure you don't have your Clipper SGA moment. Some guy who hasn't been used right, who hasn't quite figured it out, who's young, and you give him up. Now, in the Clippers' defense, they were making what they thought was a big trade, and they knew they had to give up some talent. You weren't in a place to leverage Paul George for nothing, right? But let's be honest. They blew it in spectacular fashion.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the worst trades.
Clippers going to clip.
In history, yeah.
Yeah, and they did it again. Good for you guys. Excellent. Well, in the Jazz rebuild, as much as you want to draft the right guys, you have to make sure you give them time to develop. So even if I don't think Keontae is going to develop into what they want him to be, which I don't think he's going to, I get why they moved Sexton and why Austin says, we're going to put him in there and we're going to see what it looks like. And if something does click, and if he gets some stuff, which I think instinctually he just lacks because he hasn't been coached at it for 10 years and he hasn't had all those reps, I mean, he starts the offense too late for starters.
Yeah.
Before anything has happened.
Yep.
And I'm sitting up in the booth with Ask Jake and Tim LeCone, and I'm just like, it's 15 on the clock.
Yeah.
It's 9 on the clock, and you haven't passed the ball one time.
Yeah.
I can go out and defend if you dribble over there and stand and look at a guy. And I'm an old, broken down, never was lousy high school basketball player. But if you just let me stand on the weak side next to my guy and nobody cuts and nobody passes, you and I can defend.
Yeah.
And that he doesn't know that at this point drives me insane.
Yeah. I recognize that, and I think long term, that's probably why Walt Clayton's going to be the guy for the Jazz. I believe that. And, long-winded way of getting to this point of Isaiah Collier can't shoot, so they're going to try out Keontae because Keontae has experience, and I think starting both Ace Bailey and Walt Clayton day one puts everyone else at a disadvantage because it is a very steep learning curve in the NBA.
If they invest 30, 40, 50 games to make sure, because if it clicks in for Keontae, then suddenly a lot of things could go right.
Yeah, great.
Right? I don't think it's going to break that way. But if it does, but what they can't do is move Keontae and it clicks in 2 years later. Nobody wants to be on the wrong end of the Chauncey Billups career progression.
Yeah.
There's a guy who bounced around.
Right.
3-4 teams give up on him, and then all of a sudden, wow.
Yeah, finals MVP.
Yeah. Yeah, in a run, we were just talking NFL about, how you have to get lucky to win a Super Bowl, right? But you can be in an NFC title game 5 years in a row because you're a good organization making good decisions. And it's thrilling for the fans. The dopamine releases we were talking about earlier, excellent. So if they want to spend 30, 40, 50 games on Keontae, making sure it's not clicking in, and Austin wants to make sure, okay, before I move this guy, I can't even blow up and look awesome, wherever in 2 or 3 years. That's fine, especially in the year when the draft is really good and when they'd conveyed the pick if it's not top 8. It's like this is the perfect time to double down on making sure that you see what you think you see. Do you think they're lukewarm on Keontae? Like this is the last chance? Or do you think they really think it's going to work out and they don't have any of the doubt that I clearly have?
I can't imagine there's not doubt. Will Hardy has coached him every game of his career, and Danny Ainge has seen every game of his career.
Okay, but they've also seen a bunch of practices that I haven't seen. They've sat in a bunch of film sessions that I haven't, and they get to hang out and talk with him and know his. We get a very short window that's very structured, right? And so maybe they're like, this guy's doing all the right things. We got to keep investing. It's going to pay off. You can't drive a clutch until you can.
Right. I believe whatever they've seen this summer implies
they think maybe he's learned how to drive the clutch.
Maybe some buy-in that maybe they hadn't seen. And Keontae's never been a bad buy-in guy. Like, he's there all summer.
But it doesn't take not bad. It takes very good.
Yeah, it does.
Especially when you're his size.
Yeah.
For all of these guys in the league who are trying to make it like 6'4" and smaller, it's a huge ask.
Yeah.
It's a huge ask. You're running around against so many 6'8", 6'10" guys. You ever been in a game with guys who are 4, 5, 6 inches taller than you? It makes the game really hard.
Yeah, it's hard.
It's really hard.
Isaiah Collier, just to put a bow on this, 41% from the floor, 31% from three, which is not completely untenable. It's not there, but it's not so far away.
No, but it needs to be 37 or 38.
It's 43% for the free throw line. Just really bad indicators that the other touches.
Say that again?
43% for the three-point or free throw line.
How many free throws?
4 attempts a game. It's a lot. It means he's making 1 out of 4 a game. I mean, he's making 1.8 out of 4.
43% is making
just
you're making
under, 3 out of 2.
It's 3 out of every 7.
Yeah, right.
Right.
It's really bad.
Yeah. Oof. There's Ben Anderson. When we come back, we're talking football. Our tour of the NFL, division by division. Stay with us, DJ and PK. We're going to the NFC East next, right here on The Zone. DJ and PK, it's 97.5 The Zone. Joined now by John McMullen, Philadelphia Eagles insider for Sports Illustrated. John, good morning.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on. I feel like the timing's terrible. You're a South Jersey guy. My partner here in crime we're in our 24th year now, Pat Kinahan. He's from North Jersey. We hear about Jersey all the time. He just won't shut up about Jersey.
Well, so, I apologize for that.
I don't think you did it. I think I did. So it's probably not me. I want to go around this division. This is a division. I'm a West Coast guy, right? So we got the apples and oranges, bananas and kiwis, as he likes to say. We're total opposites, right? I grew up in San Diego, and Salt Lake City is the furthest east I've ever lived. I lived in California, Santa Barbara, Sacramento, and it didn't matter wherever I went. Football fans talked about the NFC East. There have just been these massive teams, these huge personalities, decades, championships. They are anything but anonymous. So I want to run through the division, and we might as well start with the team you cover and the defending champs. And I am fascinated because I don't know that I've ever seen a coach beat up so badly in the season he won the Super Bowl. People talking about, this guy's got to be fired. He's lost the locker room. I'm an ex-athlete. I know. He's lost him. And they're going to win the Super Bowl. I've never seen anything like it. Can you explain what happened? I know there's, a 10-1 start and a meltdown the previous year, and there's no trust, but it still seems like an incredible story.
Yeah, I mean, there's incredible passion. You talk about is the difference between West Coast, East Coast. I think the biggest is the passion, maybe to a negative degree on the East Coast. I mean, people live and die with the Philadelphia Eagles locally. So the minute something bad happens, there tends to be an overreaction either way. There's a hype of success and the disappointment when things don't go your way. So, Nick Sirianni knows that. It's part of the gig. Jalen Hurts knows that. So ultimately, it ended well for Nick. Got the Super Bowl championship. He got his big money extension, one of the highest paid coaches in the NFL now. So if you think about it, it's just in general, his resume, 4 seasons, 4 playoff berths, 2 Super Bowl championships, a Super Bowl title, 2 Super Bowl appearances, 1 title. And, he's got I think a lot of people don't realize this. In the modern era, so the Super Bowl era, he's got the best winning percentage since John Madden and George Allen. So if you want to take it to the standpoint of best record ever in the free agency era for a head coach in the National Football League, it's Nick Sirianni. So, I'd point at my resume if I'm Nick Sirianni.
I just look at the Super Bowl ring and just keep going. That's fine. A lot has been made this past week. So you got this survey of, NFL people and ranking the quarterbacks. And, man, if that isn't an excellent July story idea topic. What is your opinion of Hurts? And maybe not so much what your opinion is of right now, because they've won what they've won. They've lost what they lost. He was there for the collapse. He was there for the Super Bowl. How good will he be going forward? How much more can he improve? And I guess to do that, we have to know where you would rank him. I think he was 9th in that survey, which set everybody howling.
Yeah, I didn't think it was as unfair as people made it out to be. I don't think Jalen Hurts and number one, I don't think he's disrespected inside the league. I think it's the exact opposite. I think he's tremendously respected, but he's also a unique player. So I think people have to understand, number one, what Jeremy Fowler does with that list every year, and it's basically a survey of executive coaches and scouts, and they kind of look at things differently. So the Eagles play a unique fashion. They're a run-first team. There's very few run-heavy teams in the modern NFL. So if you're looking at it just from an executive standpoint, like most of those guys are looking for different styles of quarterbacks, the Joe Burrows, the Justin Herbert. So to me, it makes sense where he's listed. Second part is, I think quarterback evaluation is broken in the NFL. I mean, Jalen Hurts won the Super Bowl. He had a great NFC championship game against Washington, had a great Super Bowl against the Kansas City Chiefs. It was not his best season, not even close individually. So I think it was broken by the fact that he won the Super Bowl, so everybody said it was his best ever. I think it was he took a step backward individually. And I think it's very likely that he has a better season this year, and the Eagles might not win the Super Bowl. But once, it's the ultimate team game. Nick Sirianni says that all the time when you're around the Eagles. But you know how this works. You've been doing sports talk for a long time. It's quarterback versus quarterback, and they don't even play each other. Jalen Hurts is never on the field with Patrick Mahomes, but Jalen Hurts beat Patrick Mahomes, or Jalen Hurts lost to Patrick Mahomes in Super Bowl 57. Hey, put on the tape. Watch Josh Sweat in that game. Watch the Eagles' defensive front. Watch Milton Williams. That's what won them the football game. So a lot of guys contribute to that, but obviously coaches and quarterbacks understand the job description. They're going to get more credit when they win than they probably deserve, and they're going to get more blame when they lose than they probably deserve. It's just part of it.
I find the owner, Jeffrey Lurie, really interesting. Having grown up in San Diego, I've seen some bad ownership ruin some really good opportunities. When you watch an owner keep a coach who went 1-15 and fire a guy who went 14-2 within like 6 or 7 years of each other, I mean, that is really something. And Lurie intrigues me because he had a run. He bought the team in the 90s, right, 94, and he has a run with Andy Reid that for most owners it would be the peak. It would be the mountaintop. Hey, they didn't win it all, but, man, they were an NFC title game after NFC title game, and they did get to a Super Bowl. He has the courage to fire him. Maybe another owner wouldn't have. And then he wins 2 Super Bowls with 2 different coaches. That is just so rare for owners to do this. How much access do you get to him? How much do you know about him? What makes him tick? Why would he make decisions the way he did? Clearly they paid off. The Eagles have had a great run under his ownership.
Yeah, I mean, I say it all the time. I think Jeffrey's one of the best owners in professional sports, and that goes past the NFL because of the things you said. One, a lot of things off the field that people don't think about. There's a salary cap on the field, but there isn't off the field. So the Eagles have one of the largest scouting departments in the league. Where he can spend money, he spends money. I think if you look at Jerry Jones, who's in the division more financially well-heeled, I think Jerry does things a lot. He has admitted publicly that, for instance, he likes when the Cowboys are in the headlines. So instead of signing players early, like Micah Parsons, he signs them late. So there's constant Cowboy headlines, which is great, but then you're paying a tax on top of it. The Eagles identify players early, extend them early, which gives them not only a break. I remember when Jalen Hurts was the highest paid player in the history of football for about 10 days. And the Eagles have this understanding that, hey, the salary cap's going up. That's how contracts work in this league. And you're doing yourself a disservice if you're not acting proactively. So ultimately, it evolves. You got to get it right on the evaluation of the player. But the Eagles seize the moment early. They build the right way. They build with the offensive line, the defensive line first, which is not the sexiest thing in the world. People always want skill position players. If you look at this run of Eagles' success, the one thing that stands out above all else, it's not the quarterback, it's not Saquon Barkley, it's not A.J. Brown, it's the offensive line. It's the best in football. And when you have the best offensive line, you're going to win a lot of games. And you combine that with a top 5 defensive front, which is what they've had, you're going to win a lot of games.
John McMullen, Philadelphia Eagles insider for Sports Illustrated, joining us. Do you think the Eagles are equipped to repeat?
Well, they've placed a soft ban on that word, repeat word. They call it sustained success.
Okay.
And that's their goal. So you brought up Andy Reid. It really dates back to Andy Reid when he got to Philadelphia in 1999. That's the whole goal. That's the plan. That's what they do. Because the stars have to align to win a Super Bowl. A lot of things have to go right, not only on the field. Attrition, injuries can derail anybody in this sport. We all know that. So a lot of things have to go right to win a Super Bowl. But what the Eagles try to do is be in a position to take advantage of that if the stars do align. So they are in that sustained success category. They're one of the best teams in football, top 5 talented team in football. So they definitely have an opportunity. But a lot of things got to go right to do that. And that's the most impressive part of Kansas City or teams like that were able to do it, and they were trying to become the first team to do it 3 years in a row. That's so impressive because so many things have to go right.
You mentioned Jerry Jones. The Dallas Cowboys won their last Super Bowl in 1995. It's also the last time they've even been to the NFC title game. I was stunned to learn that in the ensuing 30 years, the Cowboys have only won 5 playoff games, and they are held up as, they're the Cowboys. And then over here you got the Jacksonville Jaguars, who I think probably have less street cred than anybody else in the NFL. Constant rumors and speculation about them moving to London, right? They've won 8 playoff games in the same time span that the Cowboys have won 5. You've already alluded to one way Jerry Jones messes it up on purpose. What else is he doing wrong? Because that is really quite an accomplishment to win playoff games so rarely.
I think it starts with the way he doesn't run the team the right way. Great businessman, by the way. He's in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and I always say he should be for the business aspect of football, what he's done for the league as a whole, and obviously his own wallet. Tremendous from that standpoint. On the field, I just talked about the certain things. Think about, again, there's no salary cap for coaches, and he hires Brian Schottenheimer. It's the Dallas Cowboys. Now, maybe he turns into his dad. You're a San Diego guy. You remember how good Marty was in San Diego. But, it wasn't a high-profile hire at the moment. And it's strange when you think about America's team and you think about what the Dallas Cowboys are, essentially the New York Yankees or the Los Angeles Lakers of professional football. And really, should they be? Probably not, if not for the marketing aspect of it. So they're great at the marketing, but they're not so great at the football stuff.
The football team that might be able to dethrone the Eagles in the NFC looks like Washington, obviously, and there's an ownership change and a new quarterback. And do you believe the thing, like if you get the owner, the GM, the coach, and the quarterback aligned, that things start falling into place? Because I've heard that theory, and I look at what just happened in Washington where they went from terrible to, wow, everybody's talking about you and you're in the NFC title game. Do you buy that theory? And if they got what it takes, and they're going to be back?
Well, they're certainly, to a certain degree, they are back. It's a very good team. Jaden Daniels, I'm a big Jaden Daniels guy. I think it's going to be a superstar. That doesn't mean, he's not going to take some hits. We saw it with C.J. Stroud in Houston. People are going to adjust. It's going to be more difficult. It's not going to be just a linear pathward upward. There's going to be ups and downs. They've settled down the ownership with Josh Harris, which is unique because he owns the Philadelphia 76ers. So there's some angst there. He's a bad NBA owner, but he's a good NFL owner. It's not necessarily. I don't know if Josh is necessarily a good NFL owner as much as anybody's going to look good next to Daniel Snyder. So
low bar.
He's competent, and I think that's a big upgrade. Dan Quinn's obviously a good coach. So they have a lot of good things going in a positive direction. I think the most interesting dynamic is that they just signed Von Miller. They went out and got a lot of veteran guys. Deebo Samuel, Laramie Tunsil, Bobby Wagner's already been there. They did that last year, Frankie Louvu. Now they bring in Von Miller. The oldest player on the Eagles roster, which is 90 men in the offseason defensively, is a little-known cornerback by the name of Perry Nickerson, who's 30 years old. Brandon Graham retired. Darius Slay moved on. The Eagles are incredibly young as an organization as a whole, and especially defensively. So I think it's going to be an interesting dynamic because Washington is the one that has the more demonstrated performance with the Wagners and the Millers and the Lattimores, where the Eagles are just counting on a bunch of young guys that have already shown tremendous upside, players like Jalen Carter, Quinion Mitchell, Cooper DeJean. It's going to be an interesting dynamic, though, because they don't have any experience on the defensive side of the football.
So the last team before we let you go is the Giants, and, man, they won Super Bowls with Eli Manning. They were up and down. They weren't always good, the sustained success you were talking about with the Eagles, but their peaks were great, taking down the Patriots twice. And since then, they've only played 2 playoff games in 13 years. They haven't won any. They've largely been a non-factor, except for the fact that they're in New York and you just can't ignore them, and they're in the division. But why did they get it so right for so long, and now they've gotten it so wrong for so long?
Well, I think the demarcation line was, Tom Coughlin and Jerry Reese, and then moving on. And ever since then, it was a good coach for a long time and a good organization for a long time. And they decided to move on at the coach and GM, and they made a lot of bad decisions along the way, and they've never been able to recover. I think they're finally going in the right direction. I think defensively, especially, you look at their defensive front and you go, that might be the best defensive front in football. They're certainly in the conversation. So I always say about the NFL, everybody's got good players, even the bad teams. You can talk yourself into a lot of things. So if you're playing the New York Giants and you look at, they added Abdul Carter to Kayvon Thibodeau and Dexter Lawrence and Brian Burns, you say, how are we going to block these guys? And maybe on an individual week that shows up, but until they figure out the quarterback position, and it should calm down, but Russell Wilson is what he is at this stage of his career. He's going to be competent, and that's better than when they're throwing out, Tommy DeVito or somebody like that, but they're still not in a position to compete with certainly Philadelphia or Washington. In a lot of ways, even Dallas. In a lot of ways, I think this has been a haves and have-not division over the past, say, 10 years, and it was the Eagles and Cowboys for a long time, and the Commanders and the Giants at the bottom. Now it's Eagles, Commanders, and it's Cowboys, Giants on the bottom.
There it is. The NFC East, according to John McMullen. That was the tour de force, John. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Hey, appreciate it. Thanks.
There's John McMullen on the Eagles and the NFC East. When we come back, the NFC North with Peter Bukowski. Stay with us. We're joined now by Peter Bukowski, host of Locked On Packers and Locked On Sports. Today, he is here to talk all things NFC North as we get ready for NFL camps to open. Peter, good morning.
Good morning. How's it going?
It is going well, Peter. And, Peter, I am here to tell you, there have always been Packer fans in Utah. They are on TV here a lot. But putting Jordan Love there, a guy who Aggie fans obviously love, and Utah and Cougar fans can't find a reason to hate, that's seriously, that's a major accomplishment for Jordan Love. And if you ever talk to him about it, he'd be like, well, yeah, it is an accomplishment, actually. If he's honest with you, it is an accomplishment. It's hard to do. So
I feel like I have to ask him about it now.
Yeah. We watched them quite a bit here, and that division was really good. But in a weird way, do you feel like, as good as the division is, things set up well for the Packers this year?
I think the pack has come back to wow, I didn't even mean that.
Nice.
But I think the pack has come back to the pack in this case. We have to go with it now, right? So because the Lions, the loss of Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn can't be overstated. I think what Aaron Glenn in particular did with that defense last year was remarkable. Without a lot of high-end talent after Aiden Hutchinson went down, I think I was not always as impressed with him as maybe some other people were until last year. Last year really changed things for me, and Ben Johnson has been impressive since he took over the reins there. It's one thing to, and we see this around the league, we see this in college, we see this all over. Just because you know the scheme, just because you know the playbook as a coach, doesn't mean you can recreate what a great coach can do. Game planning, play sequencing, feel for the game, all that stuff. Ben Johnson was an elite offensive coordinator and elite offensive coach. I don't think you can just assume the Lions are going to be as good. Now, how much of that transfers to the Bears, I think, is a real question. They were a 5-win team last year. I still think the Packers are a more talented team. They're a more cohesive team. I think they're a better team. And then the Vikings, they had this kind of fluky, all-time great in a supposed to be a gap year kind of season. I don't expect them to be anywhere near 14 wins again this year. I know they made some defensive improvements, but J.J. McCarthy is a never-ever. Like, rookie quarterbacks, even good ones, are going to struggle to get to 10, 11 wins. And so I just, in this division with their schedule, I don't see it. I think the Packers set up right now as either the best or second best team. I think there's a 1A, 1B with the Lions and the Packers right now in the NFC. And I'm not sure I would have been able to say that last year going into the year.
The Lions with 15 wins and Minnesota with 14.
Yeah.
Those kinds of seasons, most teams don't stack those back-to-back. Mahomes has had 14 wins or more 3 times. He's never done it back-to-back. So if he's not doing it back-to-back, then you feel like the stars have to align. You have to be healthy. You have to win close games. So the Lions and Vikings have to come back to the pack, especially the Vikings with a quarterback change. Now, could the Packers peak? When you look at 6 losses last year, do you see how they fundamentally altered the team and that's going to make them better? Or do you see games where they were a little unlucky and maybe things break their way?
I think luck was definitely a part of it. There were some inconsistencies. So the things that cost them the games that they lost last year, which, by the way, they lost 6 games, all to playoff teams, 5 in their division, 1 to the Eagles on an ice rink in Brazil in week 1. That field was an absolute disaster, if you may recall. Guys slipping all over the place. And they had the possession with the ball late with a chance to go win the game. That was true in the Lions game. They couldn't get one stop at the end of the Lions game. So they had their opportunities to win these games. They needed one stop against the Vikings in Minnesota late in the season and couldn't get it. They had these inconsistencies in these big games where they play this egalitarian style of offense. The ball finds energy. It's very Golden State Warriors-y in that you're going to move the ball. Everyone's going to get theirs, and it's going to be part of this whole where the sum of your parts, it's just going to be greater than each individual piece, right? So against the best teams, that wasn't good enough, and the inconsistencies cropped up. They had 4 or 5 drops just on 3rd down in that first Lions game in the rain. Jordan Love last year, 9% drop rate. Well, Jared Goff had a drop rate below 2. That's the difference between the Packers and the Lions last year. If the Packers drop balls even at a league average rate, I think they win 12 games last year. Maybe their seeding doesn't change that much because of the way NFL, playoff seeding works, but they're a better team, and I think they have a better chance to win. You look at the playoff game, though. Okay, Christian Watson tears his ACL in the last week of the season, and you have Jaden Reed leave that game, Romeo Doubs leave that game. Then you're trying to beat the Super Bowl champs with Malik Heath and Bo Melton and Dontavian Wicks. Like, that's just not going to be good enough. That's luck. That's bad luck, and that's what happened to them in the Bears game too. They lost that game at the end of the season against the Bears. Malik Willis played half that game. Christian Watson tears his ACL in that game. So you're looking at some luck that contributed to the losing here too.
Is Justin Jefferson so good he's going to make a rookie quarterback look better than rookie quarterbacks normally look? And should we think of him as a rookie quarterback because McCarthy was hurt, but he was, able to sit there and watch film with the coaches and have a headset on during the game and know what's going on, which, Mahomes broke out his second year, and a lot of people think the first year really primed him for that. I don't want to tell every rookie, okay, you have to be Patrick Mahomes now because that's just a stupid thing to do. But nonetheless, you can learn without playing. Andy Reid thinks Mahomes learned without playing. So how much did JJ learn without playing, and how much does he get to lean on Jefferson?
I think one of the big differences there, and not to like go too far down the rabbit hole in this comparison, but I believe the stat is Mahomes had more attempts in just his last year in college than McCarthy did in his career at Michigan. Mm-hmm. So I think part of that is we've never seen J.J. McCarthy asked to be the guy. And you look at last year, they asked Sam Darnold to be the guy. So he was able to do it, but it wasn't like that offense was incredible. You look at, adjusting for schedule, their efficiency was not top 5, top 8, top 10. And part of that is because the run game was inconsistent. So I think they're going to be dangerous. I think Kevin O'Connell is a hell of a coach. But your question, can Justin Jefferson single-handedly make a rookie quarterback a passable NFL quarterback? I kind of think the answer is yes. I think he is that good. I think we look at the Bengals a couple of years ago, right? Joe Burrow goes down. Jake Browning comes in. They go 4-3 with Jake Browning, and he looks like, a guy who could throw for 4,000 yards if he was given a full season in that offense. I think the weapons and the infrastructure are just so important to a young quarterback's development. Look at Dak Prescott that rookie season. When he's got Des Bryant and Ezekiel Elliott and this great infrastructure around him, he thrived. I think McCarthy can do that. The question is going to be, in a game late against the Packers, against the Lions, against the Eagles, against the Rams or the 49ers, can he make enough plays in the fourth quarter when it has to be him? Maybe Justin Jefferson is hurt or is getting double teamed or, is dealing with an illness. Can he make those plays? Because I don't think we've ever seen really a receiver carry a mediocre quarterback through the postseason into real contention. I just don't think we've seen that.
One reason that there were 3 teams with double-digit wins in the NFC North last year is because the Bears were that bad. They were a 5-12 team. The Green Bay game you referenced is the only division game they won. So everybody else can just load up on the wins. Now, they did lose a lot of close games. Yeah. 7 games by 6 points or less. I mean, they were right there and they just couldn't do it. Do you think it'll be different with Caleb Williams now with a year under his belt? That what you talk about, the ability to make one big play in the fourth quarter when your team needs it. And most of the losses were low-scoring games. I mean, 20-19 to the Packers, 23-20 to Detroit, 6-3 to Seattle, 19-13 to Houston. There's a bunch of low-scoring games and there's one more play.
Yeah, I think part of that, though, is that was a poorly coached team. And that's what happens when you're a poorly coached team. It does take some luck. But you look at all the underlying metrics for that team. They were a bad team. They were a 5-loss team. It's not like they were some secretly solid team that was losing all these games. No, they were losing those games because they were an inconsistent football team. They botched end-of-game situations. That Lions game that everyone watched on national TV where Caleb Williams doesn't seem to know time and score, it was just that's a rookie quarterback, but your coach has to be on that. So yes, your quarterback needs to too, but that's coaching. You have to be prepared for those situations, and they just weren't. You have to think Ben Johnson is going to have them more prepared, but how quickly can you take hold of something like that? Do they have enough talent for something like that? Does the defense, if Jalen Johnson misses 6 weeks, what does that passing defense look like? If offensively, if you don't get something, if Roma Dunze doesn't take a step forward, if Luther Burden can't be something right away, do you have enough firepower offensively? I don't think you can expect Colson Loveland to come in and be Brock Bowers right away. Most tight ends aren't. It takes these young receivers time. DJ Moore looked like he didn't want to be there most of last year. How much of that is Matt Eberflus? How much of that is Caleb Williams? It seemed like it was partially the quarterback because he was frustrated with the ball not being where it needed to be on a regular basis. And that starts with a predisposition toward not wanting Caleb Williams in the first place. If you recall 2 years ago, DJ Moore was saying, we don't want Caleb Williams. We want Justin Fields. He wanted to keep the old guy for reasons that, defy God and everyone, to me anyway. But he just was not locked in. Can they get him locked in? This is, unfortunately for them, how bad teams stay bad, because it takes a lot to fix culture. It's more than just a wunderkind coach. They have just been so broken institutionally there for years. I don't know how they pull themselves out of it, frankly.
It takes a lot to be bad. That's what words to live by right there. Peter Bukowski joined us, host of Locked On Packers and Locked On Sports Today. Look at things in the NFC North as the training camps approach here and we take a tour around the league. So this division was stacked last year, and nonetheless, everybody's talking about Philly. Well, they should. They won the Super Bowl. And everybody's talking about Washington because that was a team that had found a way to get bad and stay bad. And they got new ownership, and they got really good. So, yeah, there are a lot of good teams in the North, but do you feel like those teams are elite teams in the NFC?
I think there is one elite team in the NFC this year, right now, and that's Philly. I think there's too many questions around Detroit, and the Packers have to prove that they belong in that conversation. I said before the season, I guess we're still before the season, right? But I said in the offseason, that if the Packers do end up making a run in the NFC, it will be because of their cohesion, because they're returning their offensive and defensive coordinators. Their offensive core is intact. All of their best skill position players, offensive linemen, defensive line, like they're basically the 22 starters essentially are coming back because Jair Alexander didn't play football for the Packers often enough over the last handful of seasons. But yeah, I see one great team, certainly from last year. It was the Lions and the Eagles. I think the Eagles have taken a step back. I think the Lions have taken a step back, but I have to give the edge to the Eagles. I don't see any great teams after that, but this changes so much year to year. Like in October, we might be talking about, a revitalized Caleb Williams. We might be talking about Jordan Love as an MVP candidate. Like the Devontae Adams might look like 2021 Devontae Adams, and the Rams might be 6-0 to start the year. So this can all change quickly, but I think right now Philadelphia is the one team where I go, they're in a tier by themselves, and then everyone else, there's probably 4 or 5 teams right after that vying for whatever's next.
For all fantasy football fans out there, do you like any of the skill position players in the North to break out? Any young people who've been off the radar and you think, get them now, 3rd, 4th, 5th round pick, going to play like a 1st or 2nd round pick? Who have you got?
This is the lowest price if you're a redraft guy or you're a best ball guy or girl. Tucker Kraft will never be as cheap as he is right now. I think this is a breakout season coming for Tucker Kraft, the tight end. They have talked all off season about trying to find more ways to get him the ball. Last year, he averaged over 9 yards after the catch per catch. That means every time you throw him the ball, he's basically going to get you a first down by sheer force of will. There were times last year he looked like a young George Kittle. And in the offseason, he spent a lot of time working on his body and working on his technique as a route runner. He wants to be able to get open and win one-on-one against man coverage. The Packers, I think, are going to give him those opportunities. And we've seen in these Shanahan tree offenses how big a role these tight ends can have. Look at George Kittle, for example. I think the Packers are starting to come around on the idea that Tucker Kraft can be that sort of player for them, whether he ever ascends to, George Kittle's maybe a future Hall of Famer, but whether he has that sort of skill set where he can give them everything they're looking for. 3rd and 6, he's your guy. 1st and 10, big play down the field, he's your guy too. I think all that is in front of Tucker Kraft. I think he could have a 70 catch, 850 yard, 10 touchdown type season this year.
All right, there's that tip. All right, last thing before we let you go. There's so much going on in the North, right? So many good teams, so many players, so many storylines. But honestly, in Green Bay, do they still stare at Aaron Rodgers from a distance like some ex that you just can't shake and think, what is he doing now? What is he saying now? Is he throwing a touchdown or a pick?
I think it is very much it is very much conflicted feelings for a lot of fans in Green Bay, because I think they relish that he didn't go on to do kind of what Brett Favre did and have this late career run where like he's one throw away from the Super Bowl. But I do think it does hurt fans to see him like this, to see him down as bad as he seems to be right now, the public perception to be as negative of him as it is. But this started late in his Green Bay run, the going on, Pat McAfee show and maybe taking jabs at players and coaches. I think there were a lot of Packer fans that were just ready for that to be over and who relish now Jordan Love, who seems like a very normal guy, a very cool guy, just relaxed. He just got married. The team seems to love him. The organization seems to love him. And while he's not as great a player as Aaron Rodgers, I think right now he is certainly a more likable player. So it's sort of like you're in a long-term relationship. It ends poorly. You kind of wish them well. And to the point that it's kind of sad to see them, to see what's happening to them now, because it is kind of sad.
Peter, we appreciate the time. Thanks for joining us and talking a little NFC North football.
All right, no problem.
Peter Bukowski, host of Locked On Packers and Locked On Sports Today. When we come back, what is trending? The headlines are next.